spending the next 12 months celebrating the life and works of Toni Morrison. Born in Lorain, Ohio on February 18, 1931, Morrison was one of the most accomplished American writers of the 20th century, earning accolades including the Pulitzer Prize for her novel Beloved and the Nobel Prize in Literature. Between February 18, 2026 and February 18, 2027, events celebrating Morrison are planned throughout the state, including readings, lectures, and book club discussions. Marietta College professor of English at Bev Hogue, whose academic work has included studies of Morrison, says Morrison's connection with the state of Ohio, its geography, and its history is a pervasive theme throughout her work.
Really, it stands tall in her literature that Ohio was her place, and she's exploring parts of Ohio history that people might be a little less familiar with. And even some of her works where she doesn't specifically mention Ohio, you can kind of see that Midwestern influence.
In addition to Beloved, Morrison was the author of Song of Solomon, Sula, and The Bluest Eye. She died on August 5, 2019. You can find more details about the year-long celebration of Morrison's work at WTAP.com.